Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is Lily. Welcome to the Healing She Got Faith show. I am your founder, and of course, I am the host of this talk show. So, welcome. Happy Monday. I hope you guys have been having a great day so far. I hope September has been good to you. I know for me, September has been really I've just been really fatigued. I've been tired, but I've also been like extremely busy. So September, preparing for my grand opening, so that's taking up majority of my time. So I'm definitely yeah, struggle busting. So, but yes, let's get into our icebreaker. So, I do want to say before we get started, today's episode is a trigger warning. We will be talking about suicide. So, after the icebreaker, we will be talking about suicide. So, just trigger warning. I put it in the title, I put it in the show notes. I'm going to put it on social media. So, just FYI, today is a trigger warning. So if y'all have not been here, well, if you're new here, welcome. If you have been with me since day one, hey y'all. If you're a recurring listener, hey, welcome back. But we are in our grief is the power of grief series. And so last week we talked about death and how we need to be more comfortable talking about death. And so this week we will be talking about suicide. Suicide is obviously part of death, but also too, September 10th was um, National Suicide Prevention Awareness Day. And in the month of September is Suicide Prevention Awareness. So I think it should be a topic that we discuss. But, we always gotta do our icebreaker. So I actually picked two cards from Butterfly Affirmations and the Dream cards, okay? So I'm gonna start off with the Dream cards. The first one says, every time you use the word but, you learn something about yourself. The but will reveal your limiting belief. It's like the key to unlock the door to your full potential. Um, I don't know how I feel about this card because I feel I do feel like sometimes when we try to say something, we'll be we'll be so excited about something, then we'll be like, but. And so, I can see it from that perspective. Like, it could be like, oh, I'm so excited about starting this business, but I got all these bills to pay. I got to feed these kids. I got to take care of my mom. I got to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. But also, too, when I think back to when I was really, really into the church and I was really, really into reading my Bible every single day, y'all. I used to literally read my Bible for 4 hours a day. I remember reading that but was one of the strongest words in the Bible because it would say something it would talk about sins, but then it'll say, but Jesus died on the cross for you. So I remember having a paradigm shift with the word but, because I was like, oh, but isn't necessarily a bad word. Because in that perspective, it was yeah, you did X, Y, and Z, but you're now saved and paid free of your debt, right? So with this card is saying that every time we use the word but, we learn something about ourselves. The but will reveal your limiting belief. So what I would say with this is I think this goes into a lot of what I've been talking about over the weeks, which essentially is you have to get to know yourself. You have to get to know who you are and what that means to you. You have to get to know yourself in the sense of, you know, when I'm saying but, is it because I am limiting my belief? Or am I saying, okay, I want to start this business and I'm scared, but I know I have these resources that will help me start this business? Or are you saying, I want to start this business, but I just know I don't have the time? Do you see the difference in what you're saying and how you're saying it? So I think it comes with, of course, healing and learning yourself. And that's one thing that I am trying to ground in everybody's head. You have to get to know yourself for who you are. To me, when I read that card, book have two definitions. And I know people hate that, like, you want black or white, yes or no. But no, the reality is, like, it depends on you and how well you know yourself. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that card. Okay, the second card from Dream Cards. Taking everything life has to offer, the happy and the sad. Trust that you are always where you should be and you are given the lessons you need to move forward. I'm going to read that again. Taking everything life has to offer, the happy and the sad. Trust that you are always where you should be and you are given the lessons you need to move forward. I believe this wholeheartedly, and I think it's taken me a while to get here. Um, I used to struggle with the term everything happens for a reason, and I still do a little bit. But see what I did there? I do think and I do believe that life offers us stuff. And I do believe that life has a way of working itself out. And life has a way of kind of just making things happen. Like this card says, taking everything life has to offer, the happy and the sad. Trust that you are always where you should be and you are given the lessons you need to move forward. I think in recent years, especially with doing this healing challenge, is that I've realized that I have everything I need to be who I need to be. I have everything I need in order to accomplish every goal that I've never been able to accomplish. Okay. And every lesson has put me in a position to where I know more, I can do more, I can do better, I can do less. And so believe, I believe that life does offer us things. I believe life works itself out. And when we heal and we do better and we see better, we become better. We become one with life. Let me tell y'all something. This just reminds me. So like a couple things that happened over the weekend, and normally it would be stuff that like just really ticks me off. It would be stuff that just normally I would just pop a fuse with, but like I just found myself being more calmer. Like it's just like, okay, it's not gonna work, that's fine, I just gotta move forward. And it was like just as simple as like the internet not working. I don't know, like on Sunday I woke up, I wanted to watch this new movie on Netflix while I caught up on some admin work with the business. My TV and my Wi-Fi would not connect. And so normally I'd be like, F this. Why is this happening? I just want to be productive. Da, da. And literally, I just kept playing with the remote. Like, I was just like, it's going to happen. It's going to work out. It's going to set me back about 15, 20 minutes, but whatever. Like, do I really have a press schedule today? No. So, what am I really stressed about? Nothing. So just I'm seeing little things like that. And I'm also reading the book Atomic Habits and just learning about like literally like atomic habits because like an atom is like super, super small. So literally I'm just learning more about myself. Which I think it's been fun. I think I am gonna have an episode about like me relearning myself. Because it has definitely been fun. It's been fun. It's been interesting. Okay, butterfly affirmations. Even when things aren't perfect or don't seem to be working out, I choose to trust in life. I think that just goes with what I just said. Like, I don't think life will ever be perfect. I don't believe in perfectionism. I don't believe anything on this earth is perfect. I think, everything does seem to work itself out one way or another. Um, I do come from a life where it just always feels like it's a battle. Anytime I have like my hopes up, things just don't seem right. Anytime I try to like do things, like there's always things in my way. Like I was just talking to somebody about my building, like, and this is somebody who has like been by my side since I bought this building and like literally just speaking life, like it's progress, it's still coming in. And I'm like, yeah, but we bought this building like in 2020, like, and then like he made a joke and was like, oh, like we'll just blame it on COVID. I was like, or we can blame it on the freaking contractors that like put me in this bind. And so we started laughing or whatever. And he was like, yeah, but like it's still progress. And so I've been very open and honest with you all about just how I've had to like become okay with this building. I've had to give it gratitude. I've had to sit in it and embrace it because I've had such a negative, like, I've had such a negative like feeling towards it, but like I had that paradigm shift. I had that shift to like switch and be in a place where I'm like, okay, this building isn't that bad. It is coming together. And so, I wish younger Lisa would have had a mentor or an example of somebody who was like, hey, like if things don't work out, like there's another outlook on life. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like there's just other outlooks on life. And I think for majority of my life, I've been so worried about other people and how they feel that I never really paid attention to how I feel. And so now that I'm paying attention to how I feel, like it's a game changer because I'm like, whoa, this is so cool. So, okay, last card from the butterfly affirmation deck. Life doesn't have to be perfect in order for me to choose happiness. Today, I choose happiness. We've picked this card quite a few times. And with the healing journey, I can definitely see that. Like we definitely choose happiness over here. It's not always easy because I'm definitely one of those people like you should definitely embrace your emotions. But with some of the stuff we talked about today, like um, just knowing that life works itself out, just knowing that you can control the narrative and you can control the the way you feel. I think a lot of times, we stay in our misery. A lot of times we stay in a place that we don't really have to be. So there has to be a paradigm shift in who we are, how we're doing, what does that look like? And we just kind of have to make things happen. And that's easier said than done. It takes a lot of work. Like I've been telling people, it took a lot of work for me to get to this place. And I still have such a long way to go, but I'm very much further than where I used to be. So, yeah, I think those were very general and just kind of like little reminders today. I don't think they were as deep as sometimes they can be, but like definitely just um gentle reminders of who we are. Okay? Okay. Yay, that was the icebreaker. Okay, now let's get into today's topic. Okay. So we are still in the Power of Grief series. Last week we talked about death and is death a taboo to discuss. You also got a double hitter last week, so you got a bonus episode, which was another recap because episode what was it 36 just didn't sound good. So you got about a 20-minute recap bonus episode, and then you also had episode 37 where we talked about death being a taboo and how we need to talk about death, and we talk about wills and trust and things of that nature. So today we are coming to episode 38 in the Power of Grief series, and today's topic is suicide. Let's talk about it. So if you notice, I typed suicide in all capital letters, okay? And so I did this because when I was in my undergrad school, and this was like my second semester in social work program, I had an older professor. He was like in his late 80s, y'all. And it was crisis intervention class, okay? And in crisis intervention, suicide is a big topic in that. And so on the first day of class, he literally got up and was like, we are going to talk about suicide in this class. I'm going to say it. You're going to say it with me. And he goes, suicide. And I'm like, well, not just me, but the class is like looking at each other. So he gets up again. Mind you, it's like this 86-year-old. He like throws his hands up and he goes, suicide. And we're like, okay. He's like, yeah, you have to become comfortable with talking about it. So we are going to say this. And he like, we're not joking about suicide, but you need to be comfortable with talking about suicide. So he goes, suicide. And he was like, all right, now, okay, I done said it 3 times. Y'all need to say it with me. Suicide. And so we all get to saying like suicide. And so that lesson always sticks to me because he was like, if y'all are going to be social workers and y'all are going to be working in crisis intervention and you're going to be working with a plethora of clients, you have to be able to talk about things like death and suicide. And you have to be able to talk about different things that will make you uncomfortable because you are the professional. You could be the lifesaver from 1 second to the next. This is up to you. Okay. And so I always think about that. And so there was a time in my life where I would never talk about suicide. I felt like in my family, I knew some people who had like suicide ideation. I feel like I had knew about like people who were self harming, which self harming can lead to suicide, and so and then I've also have lost quite a few classmates to suicide, and so there was a point where I just did not talk about it. It was so uncomfortable about me. Now, I've never witnessed an actual suicide close to me, like close. Like, yeah, I've had classmates, but it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, like, man, we ain't spoken in years or things like that. Also, too, like recently, there's been a lot of suicide um, cases like publicly, like a couple of famous people. I know in St. Louis we just had a funeral for a young lady who committed suicide from being bullied. And so as I started to become more aware of suicide and suicide ideation and self-harming and how they all come together, and even I had to educate myself on like what is suicide, what is suicide ideation, what is self-harming, and how are they all different. um it's been one of those things where I've kind of my outlook has changed on suicide. And so that brings me to September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and September 10th is, I believe it's National Suicide Prevention Awareness Day. And so the one cool thing that we have now as a resource is, you know how you can dial 911 for an emergency? Well, you can now dial 988 for any crisis intervention that you may have. One of the biggest things was this line used to be the suicide prevention line, which was like this big long 1-800 number. But through advocates and through activists, we were able to create the 988 number, which is a wonderful resource to have. It's 24/7 hotline with professional help. And so they can help you if you've ever used a hotline. It's, people on there at all times of the day who really just help talk you through it, and then they'll provide you with resources. And that's just for the people if you've never used a hotline before. That's typically how that goes. If you're in a real dangerous situation, they will involve authorities, and depending on the situation, they might call a family member, but it just depends. Each case is different, but this is a good resource to know about and to have. So just like you would remember 911, you can now remember 988. Okay. So with it being Suicide Prevention Awareness, the September 10th that just passed, I thought it was, and we just talked about death last week. I just thought it was only fitting to like, let's talk about suicide. And growing up, I didn't grow up in a. I was gonna say growing up in a Christian household. My household was not Christian. We weren't even religious. But as some of y'all know my story, I started going to church when I was in college, and even before then, like even with me not growing up in the church, I used to always hear like suicide is so selfish and suicide is like the worst sin you can commit, and if you commit suicide, like God won't forgive you. Like if you commit suicide, you're going straight to hell. over the years, my outlook has changed about that because, one, if we think about it from a biblical standpoint, no sin is greater than the other. So if you commit suicide versus if you don't commit suicide, like think about the day you die, all the sins you committed. Like, I don't think suicide is gonna send you straight to hell. Um, but that's a different topic for a different day. But the other question is suicide a selfish act? And this might be an unpopular opinion. I don't know. I don't care. But what I will say is I don't believe that suicide is a selfish act. I don't believe that suicide is a cop out. I believe that people get to a breaking point and they need help, they don't get the help. But here's a different perspective that I recently read about. When a person has made up their mind that they are going to go through with suicide, no matter how much checking up you have done, it does not matter what you do because their mind is already made up. And there are certain signs that people give us when they have got to that breaking point. And I'm gonna go through the signs in a little bit. But what I wanted to talk about is, you know, when people commit suicide, it hurts the people around us. So like there is a such thing as survivors. So like so survivor's guilt is essentially what it is. And it hurts us because you feel like, well, I could have done this. I could have, I should have been there. I should have answered the phone when they called. I should have answered the door. I remember when I was in high school, I had got a phone call from a couple of people I used to hang out with in high school, and they had told me that one of our classmates committed suicide. And they had told me that the young man that committed suicide actually went to their house, knocked on the door, but they weren't there or something had happened. And that night he ended up killing himself. And um the friend called me and was like, I should have answered the door. I should have been home. I could have stopped him. And now, like, I no longer talk to those two classmates. But now, from my perspective, I feel like our classmate who did commit suicide, I feel like he was saying goodbye. Like his mind was already there, and I do believe like suicide is related to mental health, and we have to learn to distinguish mental health from mental illness. Okay. He may not have had a mental illness, but he may have had an unhealthy mental health. Maybe he was depressed. Maybe he was sad. Maybe he couldn't take the pain no more. Maybe he just didn't want to live no more. And I've also heard of people who have attempted suicide and they've attempted it like 3 or 4 times. And then finally, like on the fifth time, they finally are successful with their attempt. Um, to the outside people, to the outside people, it is very much so hurtful and we have a lot of pain. But we have to think about what people are going through. And instead of calling someone selfish and instead of calling someone weak for committing suicide, we have to one, learn how to support people who struggle with suicide ideation, and two, we have to become comfortable with talking about suicide. Three, you have to let go of your judgments. You have to let go of your judgments. If someone comes to you and tells you, I don't feel like being here no more, one, let them know you hear them. But two, check in with yourself. Are you in a mental place to where you can really handle this conversation right now? Because if you're not in a mental place, that's a different story. And so the conversation might look like, hey, I understand that you're feeling this way. Can I give you a resource? Because I'm just not in the mental capacity to really be of assistance to you right now? So can I give you this resource called 988? Could I potentially connect you to a therapist? Could I take you to the clinic down the street and get you some help? Um, can I, because I'm not in a mental place right now. If you are in a mental place, then that conversation might look like, okay, well, do you want to go watch a movie? Do you want to go talk? Do you want to go journal? You want to go for a hike? Like, do you want to do you want to provide a safe space for them, and then we do have a responsibility if we know somebody is struggling with suicide ideation. We do have a responsibility to like tell the local authorities, because you'll have to, you might have to do a wellness check. You might call 988 and let them know, like, hey, I have somebody that just disclosed that they're attempting, they're thinking about attempting suicide. And so that is another support for people who are in that position of, hey, like, someone just told me this. For me, like, whenever I work with clients, one of the things that I say, like, everything is confidential except if you disclose that you are suicidal or homicidal. Like, that's the law. I have to follow that mandate reporting. I mean, like, every client has to sign that. Every client has to sign a contract that says, like, I will not share anything except outside of those two. Another thing when thinking about suicide is, like, don't make promises to people saying, like, oh, I promise I won't tell anybody, because you can't keep that promise, especially if you know, like, there's a plan in place. So people who are thinking about suicide ideation, and I'm sorry, people who are thinking about suicide are at that place where they are going to commit to a plan. There is a plan. And so some of the things that we can notice is, if a person was like really, really down and all of a sudden they're just at peace, they're bubbly. So most people will look at that and say, oh, like, oh, they're good, they got better. But that's one of the clear signs that they are going to go through with their suicide plan. Then if people start giving away stuff like, oh, here, have this, oh, this meant so much to me, or you can have my car, actually I just signed my house over to you, oh, here, like, I love this book, you should have this book will remind you of me, like, I love this book, or this was my favorite teddy bear that I ever had, like, I sleep with this teddy bear every single night, you should have it. We see stuff like that. Isolation is also another warning sign. And so there's things that we just have to look out for. One of the ironic things about when people get to that point of suicide, of their suicide plan, is that most of the things that we would think are good are actually our warning signs of, like, they are no longer going to be here. They have made the decision that they no longer have the capacity to be here. They no longer have the I don't want to say strength, because that's not the message I'm trying to convey. They are no longer at a place where they feel they can be in earth. Okay. So I'm gonna read you some stuff now. This is from Self Care is from Everyone. You can go to their Instagram and see this. We definitely wanna give them credit. And honestly, if you've never checked out Self Care is for Everyone, it's an app. They sell clothes from local artists, but they're very good at giving resources and support for mental health. And so some of their warning signs that they said, so they're one of the things they said is, while there is no single cause for suicide, there are factors and warning signs which may indicate an increased likelihood of an attempt. So that's basically what I was trying to tell you. If they start talking about being a burden to other ones, they might actually come out and say they're going to kill themselves. They might be experiencing or saying they're talking about experiencing unbearable pain. They might say they have no reason to live. They also might have talk about feeling trapped. Their moods. So some of their moods are really big consideration. So People who are considering suicide often display one or more of the following moods: depression, loss of interest, agitation or anger, shame, relief, or sudden improvement, which is what I was just telling you about, anxiety or irritation. Behaviors. So some of the behaviors to look out for, especially if it is related to a painful event, loss, or change. Which, if you think about when I talk about grief, a lot of times in grief, when we lose the person, we kind of want to be with them. So we want to attempt to, like, some of us might attempt or think about suicide because we miss that person so much. We want to be with that person. And so increased use of drugs and alcohol, withdrawing from activities, aggression, visiting or calling people to say goodbye, acting reckless, sleeping too much or too little, isolating from family and friends, giving away prized possessions, looking for a way to kill themselves, such as searching online for materials or means. Um, so they split it up into mood, behavior, and talk. And so those are just some of the things that you can look for if you are worried about somebody, if you are in a position to where somebody is disclosing that they want to attempt suicide or whatever. Um, Suicide is not easy to talk about, and most of us, until we're in the position to deal with it, we don't know how we are going to react, and we don't know what that's going to feel like. Like I said, there was a point where I never talked about suicide. It was very uncomfortable. It was a taboo for me. Like, I didn't need to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. You weren't going to force me to talk about it. It was very uncomfortable. Then I got into my career and I learned about it, and I haven't ever really dealt with a client or a family member who has actually had a suicide plan, but I have dealt with clients, family, and friends who just no longer want to be alive. So they don't necessarily have a plan, but every day is a struggle to live. Like, I've talked to people who have felt trapped. I have talked to people who just like wish that they just wouldn't wake up the next day. I mean, and let's be completely honest. I went through a phase where I knew that I would never have a suicide plan. I knew that I would never actually get to the point where I committed suicide. But I went through a phase where I would say, hey, God, if I don't wake up tomorrow, I'm not going to be mad. Just please make sure my dogs have a place to live. Please make sure my family is taken care of. That's all I ask for. And so why I didn't have a plan, because there is another like side of suicide. Suicide ideation, I should say, where it's like you don't want to live but you don't have a plan. So there's another side that I actually had to educate myself on too, because I was going through a really dark place of like, well, I don't want to commit suicide, but like if I don't wake up, like, am I going to be the maddest soul in heaven or wherever, Um, which a lot of people don't talk about. And you can't talk about this type of stuff to everybody. Everybody is not going to be receptive because one, people get uncomfortable, and typically the way people deal with their uncomfortableness is that people become judgmental. And so when you're talking about suicide, you have to become comfortable with it. When you're talking about suicide, you have to let go of your judgments. When you're talking about suicide, you have to see if you have the mentality, the mental capacity to even have this conversation. And then if you do, then provide a safe space. Sometimes all people need to know is that they're not alone. I remember before I had a car, I used to ride the bus everywhere. And I remember talking to so many people, and I remember people being like, just be nice to everybody, because sometimes there are people who literally get on the bus just to see if someone's going to say hi to them. And if no one says hi to them that day, they're going to go home and commit suicide. That always stuck with me because I was like, people are so mean to other people, especially in public, when all we have to do is smile and move out the way. There is no need to be assholes in public. Yet, so many of us live that life. Have no idea why we do that. So, what I wanted to talk talk to y'all about today is suicide. Like, be comfortable with it. Be comfortable with having a conversation. Be comfortable with, like, this is part of life. Is suicide selfish? I'm gonna tell you my perspective. No, I don't believe it's selfish. I do not believe. I don't look at suicide as selfish. I look at suicide as any other death. It happened. Okay. We don't know what people are going through unless they leave a note, unless they leave a letter, unless they leave a video that explains it. We don't know what people are going through. Okay. We don't know. And we have to be mindful about that. Okay. Um, all of September is suicide awareness prevention. I know in St. Louis there is a suicide walk on September 25th. I have to find the information for that, but I'll try to put the information in the show notes or post it on our social media platform. But look at Self Care is for Everyone. They have really good resources for all types of mental health, and they, especially with suicide. I literally just went on their Instagram and just read you some examples so that you can see, like, I'm not just making this stuff up. Look into 988. You can call them and kind of talk to them, or if you don't want to call them, just Google them. Google 988, see what type of resources they have. There are also other resources like suicide prevention hotlines. So I'll try to gather that information and post it so you guys can see it. But honestly, guys, like, the power of grief in this is that we have to become more comfortable with these taboo subjects, such as death and suicide. Okay. The power in grief allows us to know ourselves and allows us to know our mental capacity, whether we've been the person suffering with suicide ideation, whether we've been the person who has witnessed somebody committing the act of suicide, or whether it is us having to tell somebody, like, hey, I cannot be there for you right now, but I can give you a resource. Okay. We have to get to know ourselves. We have to stop being judgmental. And I think my biggest thing is, like, stop judging people and stop telling people it's a selfish act. There are time and places in our life where we have to mind our business and support and love people. If your parent committed suicide, listen, it's hard, and I'm not negating the fact that your loved one has taken their life, but we have to heal and we have to become one with what life offers us. Okay. um if you or anybody you know is struggling with suicide, please contact local authorities or contact 988. There is help. There is hope. And if you're here today and you're listening, I want you to hear me loud and clear. I'm so happy that you're here. The world rotates a little bit longer just because you are here. And I want you to know you are loved. I'm sending you a hug. I'm sending you a kiss. I love you, and I'm so glad that you are here with us today. And I hope that you decide, and I hope that you are here. You decide to be here for the end of time. And I hope that you are here for the end of time. Okay. I know life is hard, but we have resources, we have help. Okay. So I love you guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for coming and listening to us. If you need professional help, you can go to Healing She Got Faith /resources. Again, 988. I'm going to keep saying that. You can also just look up different suicide prevention awareness hotlines. I know there's a couple. I know, like, NAMI, NAMI is another one. If you're in St. Louis, BHR is another one. So I will gather information. Um, and there are resources out here, guys. So yeah, I'm going to end on I love you, but love you the way you love the world, guys. I look forward to seeing you next Monday. Bye, guys.